So now I'd like to introduce tonight's first speakers, Nama Blonder, who will tell us about Go Bike. So please come up to the stage and take a seat for us. Ryan Olsen, who will share his idea behind Rail to Trail. Martin Tite with Central Parkway, Ottawa. And David Donnelly, who will chat about re-engaging the defunct and historic Welland Canals. So let's get this started. I'll turn this over to Nama. And in order to turn it over to her. Yes, there we go. Oh, sorry, they thought behind this. I'm turning it on.
Now? No. Oh, you do? Okay, you can. Okay. This is me. I just want to get a feel, how many of you tonight are architects or design professionals? Okay. Who came for the free Con Ed? Yeah, okay. You can, after the presentations, each of us has this shift pin. If you want to, ask us questions after the presentations. Only I have an extra pin because earlier today I became a Canadian citizen. Yeah. Okay, so let's get started then with this really good energy. This is a bridge for cycling in Copenhagen, which is the cycling capital of our era, more or less. And I was thinking of, this concept of cycling highway and how we could have it in Toronto. Only we could have it so much faster and cheaper because we already have the infrastructure in place. So just think of the railways. And the right-of-way, it's pretty wide, it's pretty massive, because when they were planned, they took into account a future expansion, they took some, a safety, buffer, whatnot. So this is actually one of the narrowest ones. There are like some really, really wide, like 33 meters wide, but what the tracks actually take is it's not that wide. So we have this reserve land, underutilized land along the railways that could be so easily transferred into bike lanes. Think about it, like literally tomorrow we can go and paint it, and that's it, right? It's probably the cheapest and fastest. My partner told me not to say cheapest, to say cost-effective, but it's like 2 words versus one, and I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say cheapest, and you imagine I said cost-effective. And it's probably going to be the cheapest plan the city of Toronto will ever see as yes, okay, hi, sorry. One of the challenges of making not only safe, a safe network of bike lanes, but you also want to make it to allow them to ride pretty fast, right? Because people would say, I cannot ride fast enough. It's not safe enough to ride fast, and I need to stop at every intersection, right? And this is the most important part of this infrastructure, because if you think about it, every time there is an intersection between the GO train, or doesn't matter, the railways, with the road, it's already at some sort of format grade separated, right? So it either would be an overpass, an overpass or an underpass. But that what allows, or will allow, the infrastructure to be so smooth, right? Because they would never have to stop until they reach their destination. So this is a map of the current bike lanes in Toronto. So you can see how it looks like. There's definitely a focus on the downtown. It's the most connected area. But with the railways, we can achieve over 100 kilometers of new bike lanes in the city. And this is not even all the railways that we currently have. It's way less, because we actually checked to make sure it's actually doable. So these are additional 100 kilometers of bike lanes, servicing not only the downtown. So just imagine. That is my last slide. I think I covered everything I wanted to say, so thank you.
Is this one still working? All right, I'm gonna put this back. All right, thank you everyone for coming tonight. Gonna adjust that a little. My name's Ryan Olson. I'm from Cornerstone Architecture in London, Ontario, and I'll be presenting the Rail to Trail London concept. And our team had worked on this originally for a local event called 101 Day, and then we ended up submitting it to the SHIFT Architectural Challenge, and are very pleased to have been part of the selected group. So London itself is located in southwestern Ontario, between Toronto and Windsor, and it's right along the 401 corridor and centered around the confluence of the Thames River. And it's also bisected by two major rail lines, the CP and the CN rail. The one with the most significant impact is the CP rail, because it cuts the city in half and causes traffic issues throughout. Cuts off all the north-south running streets, and this is actually a video from our office, so we experience this impact daily. And it just so happens that the trains come at 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. when everyone's wanting to, move in the city. And then, so when we were doing the 101 Day event, we thought of a way to engage the community. So we thought, what better way to imagine what this rail corridor could be if the trains were no longer in service or diverted somewhere else. So we explored this idea and did some virtual reality rendering so the public could be engaged and actually see the transformation that could be possible. But what we really were excited about when we looked into it in more detail is that by consolidating the rail lines to the south track, it would actually open up this 12-kilometer stretch in the city that is, a really needed east-west connection. And it also was bordered by over 15 different public parks. We're right on the border of this rail line. And it connected elementary, secondary schools, and even all 5 public or higher education institutions in the city. So it was even a surprise to us how well this connection would the big impact this could have on the city. So from these sites that we pulled off of it, we focused our energy on 3 areas: one in the east end, one in the west, and one in the core. So the first is a underutilized industrial area in Old East Village, and it's located on the east end of the trail. It's a real emerging community and has a lot of old industrial land that could be developed, including the Western Fairgrounds, an old Kellogg's factory, which is currently being revitalized, and community centers, new breweries. It's really quite an interesting community. And so we imagine that with this rail connection going right through this area, it could further enhance that development with mid-rise projects and naturalization of the rail line to begin to further connect all these different places. So, the temporary occupation of the underutilized lots adjacent to the rail line could, as envisioned here, could be the sort of kickstart the transformation, and engaging the community members and local businesses to sort of collaborate together to imagine ways that these underutilized properties could be used for their benefit. The second site is centrally located along Richmond Row, which is the main downtown corridor of London, and is currently one of the most critical bottlenecks. It was actually the one you saw in the video there. And opportunities emerge here for mid to high-rise development, while also permitting Piccadilly Park and existing residential and commercial spaces to fully engage the rail line, switching a lot of what is currently back of house into desirable frontage, and providing a cohesive link to the surrounding neighborhoods. All along the rail line here, it's all fenced off. Even where that park is, it's all just a large hedge and fenced off, so it would really open up all these connections across the rail line. So here, the former CP rail station could be repurposed into a community hub, providing much needed public services and amenities to the area, with a focus on helping some of the vulnerable population in the area. And its architectural character, recollecting the rail era, makes it a real effective historical landmark, and both in its present context and as part of the reimagined corridor. Finally, we looked at a suburban site on the far west end of the trail, right before the two rail lines kind of merge back together. This is in the village of Hyde Park, and adjacent to the Kelly Stanton environmentally sensitive area. And it provides an opportunity for kind of a woodland oasis that embraces play and nature and wildlife, while connecting into an existing accessible path along the west end of the village. So a combined stair and ramp connected to the elevated portion of the rail line here could double as a public amphitheater, and in partnership with Reforest London, trees could be planted more abundantly throughout the park, and integrated pathways to attract wildlife and community gardens and educational opportunities for the environmentally sensitive areas of the city. So over time, these interventions could grow into a long-term strategy for adaptation of the rail corridor, gradually healing the physical scar that the rail line has left on the urban fabric. And in the end, this portion of the CP rail would leave a unique legacy, transforming itself from a once essential industrial corridor to become a green linkage connecting London from one end to the other.
Hello, Martin Tite, GRC Architects. We're an Ottawa practice. We're calling it a study, but really it was an exploration. We're curious thinkers, and we think we have an obligation to do things other than what our clients are asking us to do all the time. So this was an independent study that we did, and it was partly about consciousness raising, thinking about the Queensway, which is the provincial highway that runs through the center of Ottawa. So here's the situation. I was astounded when we made this image. The Queensway, as it passes through the center, the traditional part of the city, occupies the equivalent of 50 blocks of downtown Ottawa. That's an enormous area that's being used basically as a parking lot twice a day. It doesn't work. The province is continuing to broaden the Queensway, make it wider, thinking that that's somehow going to fix this problem. So this is kind of a rebuttal to that. So here's what it's like when you're around the Queensway. The thing is ugly. It's stupid. It compromises heritage. It wastes an awful lot of land. You have these Berlin Wall kind of effects happening. All the neighborhood, everywhere that passes by within about a block and a half or 2 blocks is degraded. You can just see it. You just walk there and you know it. And obviously that has an effect on property values. So there's a dollars and cents argument about all this. The whole idea of a freeway running through the middle of the city is something we simply wouldn't do now. So why do we continue to promulgate it? And it doesn't even work. It's backed up twice a day, every day. So the big idea was, the question we asked is, what happened if this thing went away and we either buried the Queensway or turned it into some sort of boulevard and used the land for something else? And this particular version of the proposition says that we're converting the land into green space. But there are other things you could do with it, obviously, but this was an idea that seemed to resonate with the Ottawa situation in particular, because it's a city about linear parks. So you can see the brownfield and the asphalt's removed. It enables a central parkway through the city, and that of course would have the consequence of enabling or encouraging development in its adjacent to it. So the consequence of removing the Queensway would have a whole series of effects. First of all, we simply create 92 acres of green space in downtown Ottawa. And that's, when I'm saying green space, I'm not counting the roads that run through it. I'm talking about green space, green stuff, not hardscaping, green stuff. Again, I compared it to, there's some comparatives here to those of you that know Ottawa, but for example, it would be the size of Tunney's pasture. So another consequence, some of the previous speakers have alluded to similar ideas, is that there is a fairly extensive network of bike pathways that tend to organize themselves around the canals and the rivers. But what this would do is actually create a bicycle superhighway that would create the opportunity to move east-west through the middle of the city that doesn't exist right now with bicycles. As I said earlier, Ottawa is a city about linear parks that follow either the rivers or the canal or parkways. And what this would do is actually create a way that all of those are connected with a new linear park. Another consequence of this project would be that we actually discover or uncover property that has been sterilized by the Queensway. So we'd literally just be creating 22 acres of brand new land downtown that's not usable right now, and an enormous area of underdeveloped or underutilized properties that you're seeing there in yellow would suddenly become very, very valuable and desirable places to develop. As I said earlier, immediately adjacent to the Queensway, there's this zone. Where's my pointer? The zone just immediately adjacent to the Queensway is quite degraded. So this would have an immediate hard impact on those territories, but we'd obviously have a great impact through the entirety of the center of the city, with green space being thrown within 5 and 10 minute walks of many people. So this is the full extent of the drawing. We made this drawing. It's 12 feet long in our office. So everything that's in the darker color is the new properties. The lighter peach tone is properties that would suddenly become redevelopable. And you can see as well the relationship between some of the new green space and these existing green spaces. So we actually mapped all this out in detail across the city and sort of thought about each and every intersection and what might happen there. In this particular instance, there's a high school here, so we said, well, maybe that high school could actually use that piece of land for a playing field, and the existing playing field that's here could be turned into a developable property. So that's it. It's, as I said, I'm happy to be here because one of the things we wanted to do is to for folks in Ottawa anyway, do a bit of consciousness raising and make people aware of this kind of hidden asset.
Hi there. My name's David Donnelly, and this was a project I completed largely for my master's at McGill University. These are my models over here, and they've been in my parents' basement for the past couple months. So, thanks for letting me bring them out and share them today. Okay, so this is the Welling Canal, constructed in 1923. It climbs the Niagara Escarpment and connects Lake Ontario with Lake Erie. There were 3 previous iterations of this canal constructed in the 19th century. These are some of the locks of the third canal constructed in 1881. They are in a constant state of disrepair, are largely fenced off, polluted, and inaccessible. So my project is to re-engage this 19th century infrastructure project with the community by creating a museum park system along a portion of the third Welling Canal. A series of museum pavilions would interact with the locks in various ways and tell the incredible story of this nation-building infrastructure project. The park would create a loop connecting the St. Catharines Museum, the historic third Welling Canal, the Thorold Museum, and the current Welling Canal. So you can see the current Welling Canal is to the top of the picture, and then the route of the historic third Welling Canal is to the bottom. So this proposal is an example of a way to reintegrate existing culturally embodied infrastructure with its community in a productive way. The path connecting the pavilions becomes a part of the exhibition in its own right, taking you inside, beside, and on top of the locks at various moments. So the first pavilion is titled Ingenuity, and it tells the story of the engineering triumphs of the canal's construction. It sits on either side of Lock 16 and bridges over it. Its design was inspired by construction photos and documentation of the construction of the locks. These included enormous scaffolding structures. This pavilion would exhibit drawings and models of the locks and the inventive machines used to construct them. The next pavilion sits inside Lock 17 and is much more somber. This pavilion is dedicated to the workers who died building the canals. 124 people died building the fourth canal, and it's undocumented how many workers died building the first 3 canals. So the design of this pavilion was inspired by photographs of 19th century shipbuilding within dry docks. Inside would be a photo gallery with exhibits on the stories of the large immigrant populations who risked their lives in the construction of this canal in hopes of a better future in Canada. The final pavilion featured is at Lock 24 of the third canal and Lock 7 of the current Welland Canal. It's an observation tower that was inspired by the numerous 1930s lift bridges that spanned the canal. From up here, you can see the cascading locks down to Lake Ontario and observe the ships climb this great Canadian staircase into the interior of the continent. So this is sort of the view from the top. Grand infrastructure projects often take a profound toll to build. These incredible costs create lasting effects throughout communities. If left to decay, they often become eyesores and forgotten scars on the landscape. There are opportunities to celebrate these incredible projects and reintegrate them into our communities, to tell their stories, both the tragic and the proud, and celebrate our history.
Okay, so thanks everyone. These were very interesting concepts. I'm gonna ask 2 questions, and just feel free to pass that mic. This one stays with me. That one goes goes back and forth. and speak into the microphone, please. Question number one is, many cities can trace their origins to modes of transportation, whether waterways, roads, or rail. In positive and negative ways, how have transportation systems impacted communities in our cities, and how does your idea speak to this?
Yeah, I think we certainly need to respect the role that all types of transportation have had on the development of our cities, and I think that was evident through everyone's presentation. You know, each means of transportation and infrastructure played a very important role in the development of those cities at some point. However, like as society and technology evolves, certain types of certain types of this infrastructure become obsolete, or at least the positive impacts they had are sort of outweighed by the negative,
longer, yeah.
right? You know, I was recently in Seattle. My brother lives there, and they were in the last phase of demolishing the Alaskan Way Viaduct, which was the two-story highway that is right on the waterfront. And it was just incredible to see this thing half down and half up still, and all the buildings that were literally like meters away from it when it was built are now have this view of the water and the mountain ranges again. And it's like, you kind of look like, why was that ever done? But you know, it was very critical to the operation of the city at that time. But you know, relating that back to our project, you know, we aren't saying that the freight line is not required, but if we could just slightly improve that system, the efficiency of that system, and get them on that south rail line, the fact that it opens up a 12-kilometer stretch to the city that connects multiple neighborhoods that just you couldn't imagine connecting them in any other way. You just start to really see the benefit of that, and you know, it just opens up all these opportunities for synergies and connecting communities and connecting the city for people versus vehicles or trains. So.
Great answer.
Ditto.
I know. Maybe I don't want to, like, you know, call you out, but maybe you can speak to the you know, notion that infrastructure can, you know, obviously you all appreciate the connectivity that it can provide, but it can also really disconnect, you know, be site of disconnection. So that was really interesting, the observation that within a certain range, and it's something that could be measured, you know, spaces around it, you know, and let's say not as relevant infrastructure start to wither away. So
Yeah, there's I mean, the example of the canal is interesting in that context, because originally it was a military installation, and then it evolved into this UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it's a recreation, it's recreational now, and so the thing had. It's kind of interesting. The thing was built for one purpose and discovered another vocation that was completely different later on. Oh, sorry. It was interesting that it had one vocation and discovered it's another one later on as times changed. And I guess the idea of removing the Queensway is kind of analogous to that. You know, it's right now its vocation is about cars, but it has this latent potential to be about something else completely.
Talking about reintegrating the land, and I think that all your projects bring back or enhance green space in communities in their own way. And so how do you see this interaction between the built environment and natural spaces?
I think it's exactly that triangle, especially because there are so many architects in the room tonight. I go to many open houses, and you know, the community consultations, and how many of those you hear the public say or focus their conversation about the height, how tall, why is it so tall, why, you know, shitty condos, right? And that's on a 7-story building. So when we named our architecture firm Smart Density, we wanted to touch on that tension between the community and the development. And in our what we always say is that the question that should be asked is not how tall, but actually what happens at grade. What is the public realm going to look like? And we try, when we talk to communities, we say, this is what you should focus on, actually, because you probably won't even know the difference between 30-story, 29, or 33, and this is usually, you know, what this margin is that the discussion focuses, but it's what are the open spaces going to look like? What happens at grade? What am I walking along the new development and how it enhances and brings new opportunities? So that's an important focus to keep in mind.
Absolutely, and anybody else wants to tackle this before? I was actually going to ask something that's very much directed at you, so I want to ask that, and then you can answer both questions maybe. So I think it's really interesting because you really focused on you know, infrastructure and its ability to embody memory, embody, you know, meaning, culture, the ability it has to you know, really evoke a cultural memory and perhaps erase it, and, you know, so on. But question I have for you is, how does revitalizing a piece of infrastructure potentially revitalize? You know, we talked about enhancing green spaces, but how do you can you revitalize culture? Can you revitalize?
That's not your mic. That's not my. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not giving this away.
Yeah, I think a big part of architecture that we learn is its foundation is narrative and storytelling, and good architecture tends to do that. And so these infrastructure projects, the cost and the toll they took on the communities to build them are lasting. And like I mentioned, the stories are not all proud and heroic. A lot of them are tragic. The immigrant populations from, a lot of them are from Ireland for the first and second canal, and then later Italy, and then on the fourth one all over Europe. They provided culture for the communities, but then there's also evidence of discrimination in the newspapers of the time. And so it's this very complicated story, and it's worth telling because of the way it transformed and built the community. So yeah, I think we, going back to the first question, or sorry, the second question.
Green space. Green space, yeah.
These projects hold such a vital place in our community, such a central part in the cities geographically, because the cities really matured from them. And now we're sort of looking at them and rethinking them from a modern perspective and saying, well, how else can we utilize these spaces and tell these stories, I guess.
Great.
I think one last thing, like on the environment, people, and natural spaces, I think we're at a point too where we don't even think of them as separate entities anymore. And everything's really about, you know, looking at the systems together and figuring out the best way forward. And the fact that some of these really large-scale infrastructure projects are real, you know, political and government issues, you know, to invest that much, you know, not to dwell on Seattle, but to invest that much money to bury traffic, to give that space back to people is, I think, really exciting for our industry. The fact that that people are recognizing that cities are for people and that much infrastructure money can be invested in really making our cities, you know, work and improve them where we can. So I think it's an exciting time as well.
Okay, fantastic. So I want to thank all of you for your interpretations on this theme of infrastructure. There's many more to come, so I'm going to go back up there and